The moment my flat white slipped through my fingers and splattered across the lobby tiles, I knew the day had already decided what it wanted to be. Not dramatic, just one of those small, stupid things that set a tone. I grabbed a handful of napkins from the cafe counter and crouched down, soaking up what I could. Honestly, the voice came from behind me, dry and deliberate, every single time. I looked up. My manager, Diane Forsyth, was standing 2 steps back with her arms folded, watching me the way someone watches a seagull that has just stolen their chips. She had been at Pinnacle Advisory Group for 11 months. I had been here for 7 years. "Sorry," I said. I lost my grip. "You lose a lot of things," she said, already walking toward the lift. I dropped the napkins in the bin, picked up my bag, and followed her without another word. The lift doors closed. She stood facing them. I stood slightly behind, and to the left, which, I had learned over the past few months, was the exact position she preferred me in. Pinnacle Advisory Group occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Auckland's Britomart precinct, the kind of office where the carpet was thick enough to muffle bad news. I was a senior project coordinator on the infrastructure partnerships team. I had managed the onboarding of 12 major clients over the past 3 years alone. I had trained 4 analysts who had since been promoted above me. I had stayed back without being asked, answered emails on weekends without billing the time, and absorbed the kind of slow, daily diminishment that you convince yourself is just part of working in a professional environment. Diane had arrived the previous October, brought in from a consultancy in Sydney. She had the kind of confidence that fills a room before she does, and she had decided very quickly that the best use of me was as a very capable shadow. I drafted the proposals. She presented them. I prepped the briefings. She delivered them. I managed the timelines. She took the quarterly credit. I had not raised it. Not yet. I kept telling myself I was waiting for the right moment, which, looking back, was just a polite way of saying I was afraid of what would happen if I did. By 10 o'clock that Wednesday morning, the office had shifted into a different energy. I felt it the way you feel a change in weather before the clouds actually arrive. The reason was standing in the reception area on the 32nd floor. A delegation of 6 people from the Regional Infrastructure Forum, a body that carried enough political and financial weight that our managing director, Colin Marsh, had come down personally to greet them. The forum representatives had flown in from Wellington for a 2-day site review. Their partnership with us was worth approximately $4 million over the next 18 months, and everyone in the building was aware of it. I had spent the better part of 6 weeks preparing the documentation, the risk assessments, and the project scope materials for this visit. Every slide in the presentation deck had passed through my hands at least 3 times. I was carrying the folder sets when we formed into something resembling a welcoming line near the lifts. Colin was at the front, shaking hands and doing his easy, unhurried smile. Diane was directly beside him, which was where she had positioned herself without being asked. One of the forum representatives, a woman named Harriet, who I later learned was the deputy chair, glanced toward me as I handed Colin the first folder set. "Is this the project team?" she asked pleasantly. Before I could say anything, Diane stepped slightly to the side in a way that angled her body between me and the group. "This is my support coordinator," she said, with the kind of measured emphasis that was designed to land without drawing attention to itself. "She handles the administrative side of things." She turned her head toward me just slightly. "You can leave the folders here, Zoe. We won't need you in the room." The hallway went very quiet. Not silent, but the specific quiet that happens when everyone present registers that something has just occurred and nobody knows whether to acknowledge it. Colin's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Harriet's assistant exchanged a brief look with the colleague beside him. I felt the heat rise from my collarbone up into my jaw. I set the folders down on the side table. "Of course," I said. "They are all tabbed by section." Diane gave a single nod, already turning back to the group. I walked back toward the open plan area, with my spine straight and my face composed, and I sat down at my desk and stared at my screen for approximately 4 seconds before I made a decision. I opened a new document. I typed the date, the time, and a single clear paragraph describing exactly what had just happened, including the words used, the people present, and the context. Then, I saved it to my personal drive, closed it, and went back to work. At 5 o'clock on the dot, I shut my laptop. I did not send the draft summary I had been working on for Diane. I did not respond to the 2 messages she had sent in the last 20 minutes, asking for it. I put my jacket on, picked up my bag, and walked to the lift. The air outside the building was cool and smelled faintly of rain off the harbor. I walked to the ferry terminal, bought a hot chips from the kiosk by the water, and ate them standing up, watching a container ship move slowly across the outer harbor. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel afraid. I felt, for the first time in a long while, like someone who had made a choice that belonged entirely to herself. I arrived the next morning at 8:45, which was the start time on my contract, not 8:15, which was when I had been arriving for the past 3 years out of habit and a vague, unexamined sense of obligation. 8:45. My inbox contained 29 unread messages. 16 of them had arrived after 6 in the evening the night before. 11 were flagged red. 3 had been forwarded from Diane's account with notes in capital letters. She appeared at my desk within 4 minutes of me sitting down. "The Harrington scope document," she said. "It was supposed to be in my inbox last night. It was due Friday," I said. "Today is Thursday." I moved the deadline. I did not receive that instruction in writing. She tilted her head in the way that she used when she wanted to convey that she found someone mildly exhausting. "I told you verbally." "I do not have a record of that conversation," I said. "If you can send me the revised deadline in writing, I will adjust accordingly." She stared at me for a moment. "What has gotten into you?" "Nothing," I said. "I am clarifying the process." She walked back to her office. Through the glass wall, I could see her pick up her phone and begin typing rapidly. 2 minutes later, my phone lit up with a message from her. "Scope document. Friday Cobb. Confirmed." I took a screenshot and saved it to my folder. At 9:30, one of the junior analysts, a quietly observant young man named Theo, who sat 2 desks over, drifted past the printer near my station and leaned slightly toward me. "The forum delegation asked about you," he said, not looking up from the papers in his hand. "About me specifically?" "The deputy chair." She asked Colin, who prepared the project documentation. Apparently, she had read through it on the flight back last night and had questions about the methodology section. He finally looked up. She said it was the most thorough scoping document she had seen from a private consultancy. I absorbed that quietly. Diane told her it was a team effort, Theo added. And then he walked back to his desk. I turned back to my screen. I opened the scope document. I had written every word of it. The morning moved in the way of mornings, when something is building just below the surface. Emails came in from 2 separate clients, asking about timelines that Diane had apparently altered without consulting me or the clients. I answered them accurately, noted the discrepancy between the revised dates and the original project plans, and copied the relevant project logs into my responses. At 11, Diane summoned me into her glass office and closed the door. "You are copying management on client responses now?" she said. "I was clarifying timeline discrepancies," I said. The clients had questions I could not answer without referencing the original documentation. "You do not go around me to clients." "I did not go around you." I responded to direct client queries and attached supporting documentation. She leaned forward. "You are making me look disorganized." "The timeline discrepancies exist independently of my responses," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "You think what happened yesterday with the forum group gives you some kind of standing here?" "I have not mentioned yesterday," I said. "You don't need to. I can see it in the way you are behaving." She sat back. "You are a coordinator, Zoe, a very capable one. But that is what you are. Do not mistake visibility for authority." I held her gaze evenly. "Was there anything else?" She dismissed me with a small, tight gesture. I went back to my desk and added a summary of the conversation to my document. 2 hours later, the managing director's assistant rang my extension. "Colin would like a brief word," she said. "His office, whenever you are free." I found Colin standing by the window of his corner office on the 34th floor, looking out over the water. He was a measured man, not warm exactly, but fair in the way that mattered. He had been with the company for 14 years and had grown it from 12 staff to just over 90. He turned when I came in and gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit down, Zoe." I sat. He set his phone face down on the desk and folded his hands. "I received an email this morning from Harriet Ngata at the Regional Infrastructure Forum." I kept my face steady. She wanted to know who the primary author of the partnership scope document was. She had reviewed it in detail and had specific technical questions about the risk weighting in Section 4. He paused. I told her I would look into it. Then I pulled the document metadata. He turned his monitor slightly so I could see the screen. The file properties were open. Author: Zoe Tanner. Last modified by Zoe Tanner. Created by Zoe Tanner. The revision history showed my name across every major draft. "Diane submitted this document under her own signature," he said. "She finalizes everything before submission," I said carefully. "That is the established process." He looked at me for a long moment. "Did she make substantive changes to this document?" I held the pause for exactly as long as honesty required. "No." He nodded once, slowly. He opened another file on his screen. "I also pulled the last 5 project submissions from your team. Same pattern across all of them." He sat back. "And I had a brief conversation with the forum delegation this morning before they left for Wellington. One of them mentioned what happened in the corridor yesterday." I said nothing. "Harriet used the phrase, unnecessarily diminishing," he said. Her words. He stood and walked back to the window. I had the sense he was choosing what to say next with some care. "I want to ask you something directly, and I want a direct answer." "Of course. How long has this been the pattern?" I thought about the 7 proposals, the 12 client onboardings, the 40-odd after-hours emails, the 4 analysts I had trained who had been promoted while I stayed still. "Approximately 10 months, I said. "Since Diane joined." He was quiet for a moment. "Thank you for being straight with me." He told me he would be looking into it further and that I should expect a follow-up meeting. He thanked me for my work on the forum documentation specifically. I walked back to the lift, feeling like the floor was slightly different under my feet than it had been an hour ago. The follow-up was not a small conversation. 2 days later, on a Friday morning, I received a calendar invitation from Colin's office. 3 attendees: Colin, Diane, and me. Conference room A, 9 o'clock. When I arrived, Diane was already in the room. She was sitting very straight, her hands folded over a neat stack of printed papers, her face composed in the particular way of someone who has spent the night rehearsing. She looked up when I came in. "Do you know what this is about?" "I have a reasonable idea," I said. "You went to him," she said. "You went above me. He called me to his office. You gave him the impression." I answered his questions honestly. She opened her mouth, closed it again. The door opened, and Colin came in, followed by Priya Reddy from Human Resources, which had not been on the original invitation. Diane noticed the addition. Her posture adjusted almost imperceptibly. "Thank you both for coming," Colin said. He sat at the head of the table, unhurried. Priya set her folder down and opened it without preamble. Colin looked at me first. "Zoe, let's start from the beginning. Walk me through your involvement in the forum scope document." I did. Clearly, in order, without embellishment. I described the process from the initial brief through to the final file I submitted to Diane for her signature. I referenced the dates. I described the methodology section that Harriet had queried and explained the risk-weighting rationale I had used. I had built that logic myself over 2 weeks of back and forth with the forum's technical team. Diane cut in twice. The first time to say that she had provided significant directional input throughout the process. The second time to say that the distinction between author and led was a matter of team structure, not individual credit. Colin let her finish each time before asking a follow-up question. His follow-up questions were very specific. They referenced file timestamps, version histories, email chains. He had clearly done more preparation than the meeting invitation had suggested. "The metadata on every submitted project document from your team over the past 10 months shows a consistent pattern," he said to Diane. "Zoe's account as author and primary editor, your name on the submission, and the client-facing credits." He set the printed summary on the table. "This is not a matter of team structure. This is a matter of accurate attribution." Diane's hands tightened slightly on her folder. "I oversee the work." Attribution follows seniority. Attribution should follow contribution, Colin said, and his tone had acquired an edge that had not been there before. Priya spoke for the first time. Diane, we also have statements from two of the forum delegation members regarding the incident in the corridor on Wednesday morning. They described the interaction as professionally inappropriate. I was managing the introduction of a support staff member to senior clients, Diane said. That is standard practice. You publicly described a 7-year senior coordinator as administrative support in front of a client delegation, Colin said. That is not standard. That is a misrepresentation. Diane looked at me. You have been building this case for weeks, haven't you? I have been documenting my work accurately, I said. I have always done that. You're undermining me. I'm doing my job. Colin held up one hand. I want to be clear about what happens next. We are initiating a formal review of attribution practices in this team. Priya will be conducting interviews with the broader team members over the next week. During that period, Diane, you are on administrative stand-down while the review is completed. Diane went very still. That means you will not be present in client-facing meetings or communications until the review concludes, Colin continued. Zoe, I will speak to you separately this afternoon about the interim arrangements. Diane stood slowly. She picked up her folder. She looked at me one more time, and there was something in her expression that was not quite anger. It was more like the look of someone who has finally arrived at the moment they had been pretending was never coming. She walked out without saying anything further. Priya packed up her folder and gave me a small, steady nod before she left. Colin remained seated. Are you all right? He said. Yes, I said. I think so. Good. Come and see me at 2. I walked back to the open plan floor. Theo was at his desk and looked up when I came through the door. He gave the smallest nod. Across the room, one of the other coordinators, a woman named B, who had been with the company for 4 years, watched me sit down and then quietly wheeled her chair half a meter closer to mine. People noticed, she said. Not just this week. People have noticed for a while. I know, I said. It helps, she said, watching someone not fold. It helps the rest of us remember we don't have to either. I did not reply. I opened my laptop and went back to work. The review took 8 working days. Priya interviewed 9 people in total, including 3 clients and 2 members of the forum delegation. The pattern she documented was consistent and, by the time she compiled it, unambiguous. 10 months of submitted work credited to Diane that had been produced primarily or entirely by me. 3 instances of deadline misrepresentation to clients. 2 recorded incidents of public diminishment involving me, including the corridor incident, and 1 involving Theo, who had apparently been told in front of 2 colleagues that his analysis was not at the level required for client-facing work, when the analysis in question had in fact been flagged by a client as particularly strong. On a Thursday afternoon, Colin called me to his office again. The review is concluded, he said. The committee has made its findings. Diane's conduct constitutes a sustained misrepresentation of work attribution and a pattern of professionally inappropriate behavior toward direct reports. Her employment has been terminated effective today. I looked at the view through his window for a moment. The harbor was the color of pewter in the afternoon light. That was not what I was trying to achieve, I said. I know, he said. But it is the appropriate outcome. He told me that the forum partnership had been formally confirmed at a higher contract value than originally proposed. Harriet had specifically requested that I remain the primary point of contact on the account. 2 other clients had submitted positive notes about my work during the review process. One had asked whether I would be available to lead a new project that fell outside my current scope. I want to offer you a role restructure, Colin said. Not temporary, not acting. A permanent senior advisory position, reporting directly to me, leading the infrastructure partnerships team. He set a 1-page document on the desk in front of me. The revised remuneration and title are there. I want you to take a day to read it properly before you give me an answer. I looked at the document without picking it up. I have a few things I would need in place. Tell me. Clear attribution protocols for every team member. Work submitted under a name should belong to that person. That needs to be policy, not just intention. I paused. Structured workload reviews every quarter so that overtime is identified and compensated, not absorbed. And I want Theo considered for a substantive role in the new structure. He is significantly underutilized. Colin did not hesitate. All three are reasonable. I'll have Priya draft them into the role proposal before you sign anything. I picked up the document. Then I will read this tonight and come back to you tomorrow. He extended his hand. I shook it. He looked, for the first time since I had known him, genuinely relieved. The weeks that followed were quieter in the way that good change is quiet, not empty, but settled. The team moved differently. People sent emails with their own names on them. Meetings had agendas that matched what was actually discussed. When Theo presented his risk analysis to a client for the first time with his name on the slide, he came back to his desk and sat down and stared at his screen for a moment, in a way I recognized. I had done the same thing the first time my name appeared on a client document that had always previously carried someone else's. The forum account flourished. Harriet's team was precise and demanding in the best way, and I found that being the actual decision-maker on a partnership, instead of the invisible engine behind one, was not frightening. It was just work, done properly, by someone trusted to do it. B was allocated 2 new clients of her own. She sent me a message the afternoon the assignments came through that simply said, "Finally." I sent back a single thumbs up. One evening in late autumn, I stayed behind after the floor had emptied. Not because there was work to finish, but because I wanted a moment with the quiet. I stood at the window that faced north across the Waitemata, watching the lights on the bridge come on one by one as the sky darkened. The city looked the way it always had. But the version of myself reflected in the glass was someone I had not entirely recognized in a long time. Upright, clear-eyed, not braced. I thought about the flat white on the lobby floor. The word administrative. The 31 emails that had piled up overnight. The document I had created, date-stamped, saved. All of it had felt impossibly heavy in the moment, the way small erosions always do when they have been accumulating for years without anyone naming them. But none of it had been the end. It had been the last point before everything that was buried finally came to the surface. I turned off my desk lamp and took the lift down. The lobby was cool and empty. I pushed through the glass doors and walked out into the evening, and the harbor wind came in off the water and hit my face, and I let it. What I know now, that I wish I had understood far earlier, is this. Silence in the face of diminishment is not professionalism. It is erosion. Every time we absorb a small injustice without naming it, we teach the people around us that it is acceptable, and we teach ourselves that we do not deserve better. The most powerful thing I did throughout that entire period was not confronting anyone. It was the quiet, consistent act of writing down what was true on the date it happened, without exaggeration or bitterness. Documentation is not aggression. It is integrity. It is the difference between a feeling and a fact. And in the end, facts are what changed everything. If you are working beside someone who takes the credit and assigns the blame, who speaks over you in meetings and positions you as less in front of the people whose opinions matter most, know this. You do not need to raise your voice. You do not need to perform your worth for people who have already decided to undervalue it. What you need is clarity, patience, and a record of the truth. The right person will eventually look at that record and see exactly what it contains. And when they ask you what you need in order to do your best work, you tell them, directly, without apology, because that is not arrogance. That is simply knowing what you are worth and refusing to accept anything less.